In this video, we're going to reveal 3 hidden tactical schemes that meant England win the group and will face the Democratic Republic of Congo in Atlanta in the last 32. Dino, point number 1, hey Jude, let's have it.
Yeah, well, hey Jude, indeed. It was a pleasure to be there, wasn't it?
What a day it was,
yeah,
mate.
We had a great tactical view, didn't we, from where we were?
Yeah, Tactics Exposed live from Dino.
It really was. You should have mic'd me up when we were in there. We wouldn't have had to come in here tonight, would we? But yes, Jude Bellingham, what can we say? I'm glad we can now put to bed all that chatter of should he be playing for England. Of course he should. We said it from day one, and he's just proved it. Not just from ability, but from a tactical point of view. Now, Thomas Tuchel said he's got the bit between his teeth, and he had done since they were in Florida for the pre-camp. And we could see it today. And for me, he was like a yo-yo today. It was either up or back. There wasn't really much in between. So it's really interesting, first of all, as I like to do, is show you the sort of heat and touch map of him. There was nothing really on the halfway line. It was either he was up in attack beyond the strikers, or he was back helping out the defence and making tackles, or being in a deep position to receive the ball. And it's more like he's a number 6, 8 and 10 in this than he was just being an out-and-out forward in the game before.
Well, we were noticing that, weren't we? Even though the first half was a little bit flat and a little bit sort of uninspiring or a little bit jarring, we were noticing, weren't we, or you in particular, saying that he's picking up the right positions, doing the right things, even though it wasn't quite come to fruition.
Yeah, there was an early grab, as you know. I love an early grab in a game because it shows that the tactical instructions from the manager are still fresh in their brains. And England sort of Kane, and I think it was Rodgers and Saka, have sort of drifted over to the right-hand side. And then you've got Rashford on the ball. Nico O'Reilly as the left-back going to join the formation that they make a 3-1-6. We'll come back to that shortly. And Nico O'Reilly is like the decoy man. And then Jude Bellingham runs from deep, straight through the middle of that defence and almost gets on the end of it. And I was like, that's the plan. So against Ghana, we talked about that, didn't we? They didn't really have that plan. They were far too lethargic, there wasn't enough balls over the top, and most importantly there wasn't enough runners in behind, and that was really, really key. Today they started off that way, they went a little bit flat in the middle and weren't really brave enough with their forward passes, and then after the hydration break and again after half time, they sorted that out and they were much braver again, and we see it for the goal. So let's see the grab for the goal. We've got England in that classic shape of 3-1-6. Bellingham's already scored his goal from the corner, by the way. This is the second goal, and then they go into a position where Marcus Rashford comes and drops in deep to receive the ball. At that point, Nico O'Reilly is running the decoy run to distract that back 5. So Panama have got a back 5, and then Rashford has taken the wing back out, as we noticed in the first half when we were sat there. Nico O'Reilly occupies the right centre back, and that means the space is there for Jude Bellingham to go in between. Whips it round the corner from Rashford, and then he crosses for Harry Kane to score. So that was training ground stuff, and when you're playing against a 5-4-1 block, you need to get the wing backs out so that you've got the space in behind.
Quite. I mean, Jude looked so much more free than he did against Ghana, didn't he? A game which he admitted himself he found very frustrating. Albeit, Panama, to be fair to them, did commit more men forward when counter-attacking than Ghana did. But one man, as you sort of mentioned there, Nico O'Reilly, just made that left side so much more fluid than it was in those first 2 games when it felt like a little bit of a problem for England, and Jude was a big part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously we talked about, do they need Declan Rice in this game? And look, he was rested, and we're hopefully his injury is nothing serious and he'll just be ready for the knockout stages. But by playing Morgan Rogers one side and Jude Bellingham the other of Kane, and then with Bellingham coming back in to help Anderson when he needed to, Rodgers was able to be the man up with Kane in the decoy runs as well. So all of a sudden, from a Ghana game with no runners, there were lots of runners, and it all centred around Bellingham.
Well, Dino, one man who we've had on the show and with us at SunSport so far in the World Cup and all the way up to the final is England legend Kyle Walker. And Kyle had this to say when it was put to him straight after the game about what he thought about Bukayo Saka in particular, but the wingers generally and their positioning.
I think we see on both sides now that both wingers are kind of drifting a little bit too far back for me. I've seen it in probably 2 or 3 games. Well, definitely, the last 2 with Ghana and Panama, that you see the wingers probably defending a little bit more than what they should do. Now, especially when I was playing and I had my winger in front of me, I would always just say, I'll do the defending for you. That was my strength. Obviously, later on in my career, I pride myself on defending, and I took great pride in that, in making sure that when my winger got the ball, he was as fresh as possible to go and attack the defenders. For me personally, I think it's something that they're definitely obviously working on in training, and what Thomas is trying to tell them to do. And I think also as well, I think this team's built for a counter-attacking team. I think the pace that we've got up front and the engines that we've got in midfield, it's definitely built for a counter-attacking team. I think we've alluded to it over the last month now, where you're looking at Cole Palmer and Phil Foden, and you're thinking, why are they not in the team? But I think what Thomas has done is kind of built the team around, the pace and on the wings, and trying to get people up the pitch as quickly as possible. And hopefully that comes to our benefit when we're playing the bigger teams like the Spains, the Portugals, the Brazils, the Argentinas, where we're probably not going to have much of the ball. So hopefully his plans come off, and we go and obviously go far in this tournament.
What do you make of that then, Deano?
Well, it's great that he's making notes, isn't he? He's making notes like a tactician. That's fantastic. And also, when he says, I just told the players that I'll do your defending for you, I wish Kyle Walker used to do defending for me.
You'd fancy that as a winger, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. But look, I think he's right about the defensive position. So, yes, we don't really want Saka and Rashford or Gordon or Madueke, whoever it is, coming that much deeper that they are defenders. But I actually think this was a ploy in this game. This was a ploy, as I said, to suck those wing-backs out. Because if you can imagine that back five, and we can see the back five with Panama a lot, and in particular from that goal position, that then if you can get the wing backs out, then you're playing against a back four if you get one out, or a back three if you get both of them out. And then if you imagine you've got Harry Kane and Morgan Rogers making those runs, you start to stretch the defenders out and you can run down those channels. So I think it was a ploy, and I also agree with Kyle that if we're talking about counter-attacking, England will be very good at that. And when we play those bigger nations later in the tournament, that will be a different style of play for England. But we really struggled against Ghana. Panama, it wasn't as low a block as Ghana was, but it was still a 5-4-1, and England have found a way through it. So we should be quite positive.
Well, that's exactly what we were calling for after Ghana, wasn't it? Dino, what's point number 2?
Point number 2 is hell of a performance. I mean, it's an interesting week, hasn't it? It's been a really interesting week for Elliot Anderson.
Well, you were on Proper Football Daily quite robust in your opinions that you don't think it's right that a transfer to Manchester City, the £116 million move, which we expect to be completed before that Democratic Republic of Congo game. Tuchel admitted as much after the game. You were pretty strong on it, and you also were fearful that he might be distracted. One of my notes earlier on was, didn't seem to be distracted by it at all, because we thought he was very good.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've been, before we came on, I've been looking at a few things, and he's getting some criticism, and I don't really get it. So yes, I did say that about the transfer, and I think it's pretty clear that I still think they shouldn't have done it in a tournament.
Well, Kyle backed you up as well, didn't he?
Absolutely,
He would prefer to see
I still think that shouldn't be happening in a tournament. But the thing for me is that he showed it wasn't bothering him. So we can be fine with that. And as I say, like, England set up in a 3-1-6 formation in this, and without Declan Rice, remember, so that's key. So when we're talking about the right back problem that England had, then, injuries that we've got, everyone was a little surprised to see Jarrell Konsa as the right back instead of Jed Spence, for example. But it was because, as I said in the preview show, we're going to end up with one of the fullbacks not going and Nico O'Reilly going forward.
Quite.
So therefore, you're sort of favouring a right centre-back as your right back anyway. So we can see from this first grab, and we'll come on to Elliot Anderson, that you've got Konsa, you've got Guéhi, and you've got Konsa as your back three, and then Elliot Anderson is the one in front of it, and that's then 6 going forwards. So the amount of responsibility that is on Elliot Anderson there, and he had, I think it was 93 touches, and so more than 90 touches anyway, and it was this all in the central region of the field, and his touch maps are amazing. So it just shows he dominated a midfield basically on his own in there. Yes, he had Jude Bellingham dropping in. Yes, he had Morgan Rogers coming in at different times. And I was quite impressed with the way that Guéhi or Konsa jumped out to their attacker when they needed to. But he was just excellent. He kept the tempo of the play going. He mopped up, and really, really key, what do we think, 3 times in the game, he actually got back on the cover when England were really pressing the game and Panama tried to counter-attack. And there was one great example where we could see it from where we were sat. It was a great view. We were like, oh my God, they're in.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Anderson got back and got in between his centre-backs to make the covering run and push it back to Pickford.
So, a couple of questions for you. Firstly, can you see now why I was sort of challenging you a little bit in the preview show or in Team Talk when you were suggesting that Mainu could perhaps do that job on his own? When you now see the huge job of work that Anderson did, do you still think it's fair to say, it seems to me, that Mainu wouldn't have been able to put in the performance he did today?
Yeah, I think on his own that Mainu would have struggled. And the other thing was, if you remember, you're quite right, in that Team Talk show, I mentioned about the diamonds and the midfielder being the person that makes a triangle into a diamond.
That's on the ball.
On the ball. Yeah. You're trying to make... And England's left side, in the Ghana game especially, but wasn't particularly good against Croatia, was really disjointed. And this grab here that we're going to show shows it absolutely perfectly. You've got the left side 3, which is O'Reilly, Rashford and Bellingham's come into that space as a perfect triangle, attracting players towards it. And in that position, when you've sucked a team over, you need your central midfield player to be the point of that diamond, come into that space that is being created, and then either switch play or fire one down the channels. Or, as he did a few times, dink it over the back of the defence and push them backwards. So, yeah, all-round, all-action performance from him. I thought he was really, really good, and it bodes well for a midfield that will have Declan Rice in it soon as well.
Well, interesting point, first of all, you mentioned about the little dink balls over the top. We noticed, didn't we, a stat at the end of the game, about 75 minutes, that 50% of England's line breaks of Panama, when they broke Panama's line, were from balls over the top. Literally 50% of them. He was obviously a big part of that. But just one thing, you've mentioned Declan Rice there, Deano. I think it's fair to say, and we said it on Tactics Exposed as well, that one of the main issues after that Ghana game against a team who played so defensively was having Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice on the pitch. You'd assume that we'll face a similar proposition against Congo, although, because it's a knockout game, it would be unwise for them to just play for penalties from the off. But is it fair to say then that for that game as well, perhaps we don't need Declan Rice, or perhaps we don't need Elliot Anderson? It feels like playing both of them again wouldn't be the greatest idea.
I think that will be the biggest talking point for Thomas Tuchel over the 48 hours before the game. And I'm going to go through Congo's games, and we'll come back and do Team Talk show before that. And I think one of the things we'll have to address is whether Rice plays instead of Rodgers but plays higher up the field, or whether it is Anderson or Rice, which is quite a nice problem to have, I dare say.
Point number 3 then, Deano, marks, set, go. One thing that you and I both noticed, as you've mentioned, about Panama breaking through a couple of times, Elliot Anderson did well, but against a better team, if you afford them that many chances, that many opportunities to break through our defensive line or get into those dangerous areas, with more talented players, you're going to struggle, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. And so remember what I always say about, it's either that 3-1-6 formation we've just talked about, or it's 3-2-5, okay, when you're in an attacking shape. If you're in a 3-2-5, then you've got more of a rest defence that's easier to block passes coming out, because clearly you've got an extra man.
Sure.
And the problem England have had against Ghana and then against Panama as well is that when you've got so much possession, you end up in a position where one of the centre-backs gets dragged forward to back up play because you haven't got 2 midfielders, one either side, to do that. And so Guéhi does that a lot. He does that a lot at Manchester City because he comes up into a position because Nico O'Reilly's gone forward. And the problem for England here, it was almost like 2 passes got in behind them. So if Panama won it back in a defensive position and then it went to a wide player, he could just clip it around the outside of the centre-back. And there's a great grab to show this as well, where it goes, I think it goes over Konsa's head, and then Marc Guéhi is in a race. And that's why I've said mark, set, go, because it felt like for a 10 or 15 minute period that he was basically racing the striker, you know, back towards Pickford a few times. And Anderson covered a couple of times, Guéhi got across a couple of times, and Konsa got back once. And that's something for England to consider, especially against DR Congo, because it feels like, you say that they're not going to play for penalties. I don't think they're going to play for penalties, but I think they'll play the same way, because they'll think if we can be in a compact shape and rest, then we can counter-attack. So England have got to work that out, because they got quite lucky with the one that was offside, because it was a brilliant finish and it was a great move. As I say, it was one pass wide and one pass in, and that little diagonal shape, and then it opened England up. And as I say, that's the danger of a 3-1-6, because you've just got one less player. So, but look, Guéhi, Konsa, until he got injured, defended well. I thought Jed Spence came on and gave England more of an attacking threat down that right, and they were a little bit more balanced with Nico O'Reilly and Jed Spence as proper fullbacks when that happened. But that wasn't the original plan from Tuchel. The original plan was try and get Panama to come out, disrupt their line, knock it in the behind, and Jude Bellingham did the business.
Brilliant stuff, Deano. Well, we've won the group and we're through to the knockout stages, so what more could we possibly want? Thanks very much for watching this episode of Tactics Exposed. Do not forget, we've launched a brand new dedicated Tactics Exposed channel. You'll find a link to that channel in the description of this video, so make sure you're subscribed over there, as well as right here on SunSport, of course. You'll get some bonus tactical content and all the usual stuff that you love from me and Deano. Like this video, let us know what you think of what we've had to say in the comments, and we'll see you for the Team Talk episode breaking down that Democratic Republic of Congo game later this week.